Prof. Dr. Marzuki together with us, and therefore this is how it's going to be. Yeah. First, it's from Prof. Susanna, followed by Prof. Dr. Marzuki, and then just small words from us, and the floor is yours later for you. So I'm anticipating about 1 hour of the talk from you, but it's a bit, but if you think that it's not enough, you can extend it for another 10 or 15 minutes. And after that, if you allow for some questions to ask, or I might ask, I might read some questions from the chat.
In the spirit of academic challenge.
Dia nama kat wakil tu.
I think we have to put people
Aku
on.
dia punya nama kat wakil. Dia paparkan besar. Tak masuk juga tak tahu.
More. I'm so sorry for the disturbance just now. So kena except for Cik Azran. Okay, we are 2 minutes away. Yeah, okay, thank you. We have a bit of disturbance just now in Azran, so I'm so sorry about that. So we have to unmute, we have to mute everyone. So we have to ask you to unmute yourself. And also for Prof. Susanna, and I think we have to unmute also the Prof. Dr. Marzuki.
All right, I'm okay.
Yeah, all right. Okay, thank you. So it's as simple as that, if you don't mind. Okay, we are about 1 minute away to start our session. So if there's anything, but before that, Azran, if you don't mind, I would read, not really read a bit, because your CV is it's so impressive. I would ask to yourself to introduce yourself. I would just say the bit about you, and they thought perhaps
aku tutup muka.
Okay.
Dekat gitu. Apa muka? Kau jangan weh. Apa lah?
Mute dekat dia.
Video
tekan mute dekat dia. Mute. That is Prof. Marzuki. All right, so it's 2:30 already. Okay, let's open up. Okay, so start recording here. Right. Okay, so if we are ready, so thank you very much to all of the people who are joining our session this afternoon. We are privileged and we are humbled to have our distinguished guest, which none other than Azran Osman Rani himself, which we had just appointed him to become the adjunct professor for Faculty of Health Sciences, University of Malaysia. By the way, let me introduce myself. I'm Prof. Hidayatul Fatih Osman, the professor in medical entomology and parasitology of Faculty of Health Sciences, UKM, and I'm going to moderate the session on behalf of the faculty. Again, we are welcoming everyone on board to be with us today, to listen to Azran Osman Rani, which we are very, very humbled to have him together with us. So before he starts his talk, I would like to welcome another 2 distinguished guests, which is Professor Dr. Marzuki, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of UKM, and also I'm welcoming our Dean, Professor Susanna, to be with. It is also another privilege to be together in this platform together. Right. So without further ado, I think I'd like to invite first our Dean of Fakulti Health Sciences, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, Professor Suzana Saha, to give her welcoming remark before we start our session. The floor is yours, Prof. Please.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. Thank you, Prof. Hida, for chairing this session. Welcome everybody, especially to our Deputy Vice Chancellor, Datuk Marzuki, and of course our distinguished guest of this afternoon, Encik Azman Osman Rani, our newly appointed Adjung Professor from Industry for the Faculty of Health Sciences. I agree with Prof. Hida that Encik Azran Osman Rani has a very long CV, but if we can associate you with AirAsia, Netflix, and also Naluri Hidup, I think these three things are very meaningful and very remarkable achievement that from your sides that we wish that you can share with others. I think we just met Encik Azran for the past 2 weeks. Our first meeting, it was a very important meeting. That from that first meeting, we learned from Encik Azran to be a successful person. You actually cannot plan for 1 year, 12 months, or 6 months, but you have to plan for 30 days. Right, so that's come for the book of Encik Azran, the 30 days. By the way, Encik Azran, I have not finished reading it, so I'm very privileged to listen to this 1 hour, hopefully to have some gist from that book. So learning from Encik Azran about the 30 days, so we thought that it's good for us, all of us, to have a session with you today to remark our opening of the year 2021, for us to better plan for this year, not for this year 12 months, but for 30 days. Every 30 days of this year, we have a specific plan. Hopefully the faculty at UKM can achieve what we have achieved before at a greater length, and whether at a national level or at international level. Without further ado, I would actually pass back the mic to Prof. Hida for the next session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prof. Suzana. And yeah, that is what actually triggered us to invite Encik Azran to share what his thought in this session. And now I would like to welcome Professor Dato Marzuki to give his welcoming speech. So the floor is yours, Dato. Please.
Okay, terima kasih Prof. Hida. Okay, Assalamualaikum semua dan selamat petang. It's not a speech, Prof. Hida lah. Actually, then it's quite. I can see, but we have more 180 people actually joining us. Actually, for me to meet Cik Azran. Actually, I'm not here. I'm sure the participant actually don't want to listen what I have to say, but I would like to take opportunity lah to meet online with Cik Azran. Actually, and it's an honor for us, for you to accept the appointment as our adjunct professor. Luckily, Cik Azran, I was actually in one of your talk at APU. I think that was 2 months ago when Cik Azran invite you.
Yes.
And then you are talking about your new venture about mental health. So when I was in the committee, actually chairing the committee when Prof. Suzana sort of, propose your name under Faculty of Health Science. Had I not been to your talk, probably I would be wondering why actually you are interested to be in the Faculty of Health Science. But knowing that these are your new, I would say, venture, so I hope we can also benefit from you whatever you're doing, as Prof. Hida and Prof. Suzana mentioned. Prof. Azran is a person, normally when you are at the peak of your success, you will stay, but when you are at the peak of success, then he said it's time to move on. And then I think many years ago, I think you also came to our main campus to our data. I think you share, similar things, what I said just now. You always move on, nothing actually long term. You don't believe in long term strategic planning. But 30 days, wow. Okay, I have to really adjust to that. And by the way, for the rest of my colleague here, Prof. Dr. Azran actually is connected to UKM. His father, Prof. Osman Rani, is a well-known professor in our Faculty of Economy. So the name Osman Rani, if you talk to maybe the young people here, probably they have not heard, but most people actually will know his father, Prof. Osman Rani. So, okay, I will be joining you briefly. In fact, when Professor Zada mentioned he want me to come to this webinar, I see actually I have another meeting 2:30. But when I was told that actually you are going to talk, I said, okay, I will postpone the other meeting and then join you briefly before probably I will listen from you for a short while. Then I have to, log off to join another meeting. So again, thank you, Rani and Azran. I hope to meet you. And then, although you are actually with our Faculty of Social Health, but I hope we can. Yeah, we have some. Okay, so I hope you also only other faculty also can benefit. So probably we will also invite you to share what you have to share with other faculty member and student as well. So okay, thank you, Cik Azran, for your time. I hope to see you again. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Dr. Mazuki. He's a very important guy, and definitely his time is precious, and therefore we are privileged to have your 10 minutes with us before Encik Azran to start the talk. Thank you very much, Prof. Dr. Mazuki, for a very light speech, but very meaningful to all of us here. Yes, Prof. Osman Rani is a very well-renowned person, and in UKM, one of the key person for the Faculty of Economic and Business, I think, and his legacy has left behind, and his knowledge and his talk is actually walked by, nonetheless, his son himself. And before we begin, Encik Azran, if I may, to entertain our audience here with a bit of your career, very successful and colorful career pathway. And but before that, may I ask all the participants who joined our today session to make sure that your microphone is mute so that we will have a very smooth, we will have a smooth talk later by Encik Azran. All right, so so first thing first, please unmute your microphone. Yeah, okay, so let's start with a very colorful, he started I must say, I must mention about only the five career or the 5 things that he's done. Okay, beginning from February 2003 until February 2004, he has been with Kuala Lumpur Stock Exchange or Bursa Malaysia Berhad as a senior vice president and head business transformation office. And from that, he moved on to Astro All Asia Networks as a senior director business development, and that is actually from March 2004 until June 2007. And from there, because it's actually what he does with that as a business, as a senior director looking at the business development, he actually initiate and built a portfolio of 12 international businesses all over South Asia and also Southeast Asia, and also including China, Indonesia, India, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And later on, he moved on to Asia X Berhad which I believe I think most of us have been on the AHX, going to oversee on these flights, and he actually start up this AHX Berhad actually. And from there, the growth is from 6 years from inception. AHX successfully listed with market capitalization of RM3 billion in 2013. So that together with AHX, he grew up with 2,500 staffs with annual revenue of approximately $1 billion for 2014. And not only that, he moved on to iFlix Sendirian Berhad as a CEO, Chief Executive Officer for Malaysia, and a Group Chief Operating Officer. And that is from April 2015 until April 2017. But later on, he found another love for his life, which is Naluri Hidup Sendirian Berhad, as a Chief Executive Officer and co-founder. And that is actually a company founded for the love for digital health technology. So this company, using the digital health technology, applies artificial intelligence tools to augment professional care for chronic diseases and mental health by combining behavior science, data science, and digital science. So these actually assembled founding teams, raised over 3 million US dollar funding from US, German, Singapore, Hong Kong, and also from Malaysia investors. And I'm sure the long list is there. I won't talk more about this. I let the guy himself, the gentleman himself, to speak more, but it is actually to speak more on the topic of his book titled 30 Days and 30 Years, Resilience and Agility for 2021. And I think this is a very, very meaningful topic as we are now in the midst of COVID-19 outbreak. COVID-19 has affected all of us, and therefore we have to stay resilient and agility for the not only for today, next month, this year, but also the coming years. Okay, so I think I've talked too much already, Encik Azran. I really, really hope that you are enthusiastic as much as I am right now to give or to share your views on the topic. So the floor is yours, Encik Azran.
Okay, terima kasih banyak Prof. Hida. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Selamat petang, salam sejahtera semua teman-teman dan warga UKM, khususnya dari Fakulti Kesihatan. And thank you Dr. Marzuki, Timbalan Naik Chancellor, Prof. Dr. Suzana, Dekan Fakulti Sains Kesihatan, dan semua yang menjemput saya untuk bertukar pengalaman dan pendapat sebagai iktibar dan inspirasi untuk kita mulakan tahun baru 2021 ini dan membina kedayatahanan atau resilience dan ketangkasan atau agility secara peribadi atau dalam organisasi dan pasukan kita. So izinkan saya teruskan dalam bahasa Inggeris untuk kita sebarkan sesi ini kepada warga antarabangsa. So basically I started Naluri as a company that provides behavioral coaching and psychological support for those at risk of chronic conditions, right? Like diabetes, heart diseases, and cancer, but also depression, anxiety, and stress. And that's why I'm excited about the big overlap in the missions of Naluri and the Health Sciences Faculty of UKM. See, as a digital company, we use a lot of quantitative data, and we saw spikes of 40 to 50% in levels of stress, anxiety, and depression this past year working with our clients. And of course, this is coming from the massive uncertainties, economic and financial hardships, disruptions to work, and our lifestyle routines. So hopefully we can share our data and analysis and collaborate together on research initiatives to expand our knowledge in digital health sciences. Now, we're all told we need to develop mental resilience to equip ourselves to handle these pressures and uncertainties. So my goal today is to give you some actionable tips. How do we do that as you plan ahead for one? And if there's anything we learned from 2020, is that things will not go nicely according to our plans. So to recap, right? 2020 taught us to expect the unexpected. When things don't go according to plan, we are hit by unexpected setbacks. And there are usually two things that hold us back. First, we're all oriented to stick to what we're familiar and comfortable. Doing something new makes us easy. That's senang, right? It's risky, it's unproven, and usually there's more downside than upside. And if we've had past successes doing things one way, it becomes harder to change to a different approach. And to be blunt, this is a challenge faced by academics who might be used to doing things one way to now having to rethink and reimagine ways to create knowledge, but also to commercialize it into real world applications. But second also, sometimes we want other people to change. We think our boss is wrong, our clients are wrong, our students are wrong, and that they should change because we believe we're right. But facts don't win arguments. And expecting others to change means we surrender our fate, our happiness, our peace of mind to someone else. And since they're not likely to change, we wallow in our misery, our frustration and resentment that eats away inside of us. So a little bit about the things I went through, right? As an entrepreneur over the last 15 years or so, I faced so many unexpected setbacks. I remember, for example, the 97, 98 Asian financial crisis. Then kemudian when we started the airline in 2008, we immediately faced the brunt of the global financial crisis, where all the banks who had committed to aircraft financing all pulled out. And in that same year, oil prices went crazy. Right? It had been in the range of $50 to $75 from 2002 to 2007. And that's what our business plan was based on, right? That's how a lot of our research, we look back at historical data and we try to extrapolate and just continue the trend. But in the first 6 months of 2008, suddenly oil doubled to $147 per barrel. Now, oil is 50% of our airline's cost, right? And no plan could have anticipated the shock. On top of that, all the banks advised airlines to hedge their fuel as a way to mitigate the risk of oil price volatility. And that's what many airlines did, including us, right? So what that means is, let's say we're panicking, right? Oil prices are going up and up and up. Let's say it's $90. So you panic, you go to the bank and you say, how do I remove this volatility? And the bank says, no problem. We'll give you a contract to fix the price of oil, but at $100 a barrel for the next 12 months, right? Because they always make a slight margin. And so you do it because you're pressured by the board, you're pressured by shareholders and analysts to do so. And when it kept going up all the way to $147 in June, we were really relieved. Wow, I thought I was so smart, a 36-year-old CEO making a right big decision. But suddenly, so fast, in 6 months, by December 2008, it had collapsed all the way down to $32 a barrel. And we had locked the price of oil at $100 a barrel. And this caused 50 airlines around the world to go bankrupt in 2008, 2009. And we narrowly avoided that fate because it just so happens the one bank who was the counterparty to our hedging contract, they went bankrupt first. So what a narrow escape. And every year after that, there was one shock after the other. In 2010, there was an Icelandic volcanic eruption that closed down the entire European airspace for a week, leaving thousands of our passengers stranded at London, Kuala Lumpur. And in 2011, the next year, we started flights to Tokyo. Boom, the Tohoku earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear tragedy. And the following year, 2012, just when we started flights to Christchurch, New Zealand, boom, the city got hit by 2 earthquakes, and it was so tough we had to pull out of that market. And it wasn't just natural disasters. Every year we had to deal with difficult policy or regulatory environments, with restrictions being imposed on us to limit competition with national airlines. But nothing prepared us for 2014, when we had to deal with not 1, not 2, but 3 black swan events. So black swan events are events that are so rare, yet they can have a massive impact if they happen, just like COVID-19. So in this case, in March, there was MH370. You remember, a plane went missing. And then July, suddenly there was MH17, where a plane was shot down. And then December, pula, QZ8501, a fatal plane crash. Now, although none of these airlines were under me, the impact to the entire travel industry was brutal, with travel demand from China and Australia, our 2 core markets, plummeting by over 30%. So 2020's COVID-19 global pandemic has brought healthcare to the forefront. But this is also a time to challenge conventional models of healthcare and to look at things differently. Right? So when I come to look at things differently, and so my team and I are trying to challenge the status quo in 3 important ways. First, most of healthcare today is reactive and transactional. People wait until they're sick, baru nak pergi doctor, right? Whether it's at a hospital or clinic, or now people are booking a session via a telemedicine platform. But with that consultation, the doctor might assess the patient, provide a diagnosis, maybe a prescription, and the patient goes back home. However, this transactional model does not work well with chronic conditions like diabetes, sakit jantung, cancer, and even mental health, which cannot be fixed with a single consultation visit or a single treatment or a single procedure. We need to provide care over months and years to help patients change their lifestyles to become healthier. But much more frequent interaction, where healthcare professionals move from transactional consultation to ongoing coaching and monitoring, is too costly if it requires frequent one-on-one sessions. And it also becomes inconvenient for the patient to block specific times in their schedule to connect with the healthcare professional. And on top of that, in Malaysia and in this region, increasing the frequency of interaction creates a supply issue because we don't have enough healthcare professionals. For example, the number of psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors to provide adequate population mental health support is woefully lacking, as are clinical dietitians that understand nutrition guidelines for specific disease conditions. And of course, we're looking for more and more clinical psychology and clinical dietetics graduates from UKM, but we also want to change the model of care, right? We see a need to change this reactive and transactional model of care to one that is much more ongoing, structured, and programmatic, right? Behavioral coaching, psychological support, monitoring, and problem solving. But how do we do it in a way that's accessible, convenient, and affordable? And the next challenge that we see in today's healthcare delivery is that it's very siloed. Healthcare has become so specialized. If you see a cardiologist, she will only focus on your heart. If you see a gastroenterologist, he will only focus on your gut health. A dietitian helps you with your food. A psychologist helps you with your mental health. But health, particularly chronic conditions, are deeply interrelated. And there are very clear correlations between diabetes and depression, heart disease, and anxiety. So we envision a model where we move from single doctors or specialists to a coordinated multidisciplinary team that supports each patient, putting the patient at the center rather than making the patient see individual specialists and having to figure out all these different aspects of health and medicine and how they fit together. And the third challenge that we see is, healthcare is activity-based, bukan outcomes-based. So digital health apps yang ada, they tend to focus on activities, right? Count your steps taken in a day, count your calories, how many hours did you sleep, your fluid intake. But these healthy activities may or may not generate actual health improvements. Likewise, patients or their insurance, their company pay doctors based on time or consultation, but not on actually whether that leads to a health improvement. So we see a need for solutions that are outcomes-based. That means, how do we actually improve actual health metrics like weight loss, blood sugar reduction, blood pressure improvement, cholesterol reduction, and quantitative improvements in stress, anxiety, depression. So we imagine a future where payers and providers have aligned incentives when clinically significant health improvements are delivered and success or outcomes-based fees are paid. So that enables insurers to reprice risk strategically at a more personalized levels. Now, tackling these big challenges is difficult, very difficult, especially when there are large established players that are comfortable with their existing business agendas. So, but that's my job, right? Like I come in, yes, there are all these big giants that I have to tackle, whether it was in the airline industry with SIA, Emirates, Cathay Pacific, Malaysia Airlines, or with iFlix where we had to tackle Astro or Disney or Fox, and now with healthcare. But if we focus on what is it that's really in the best interest of the people that we're serving and just challenge how things are being done, we can develop a different perspective. Tapi unexpected challenges are not just confined to a work or professional setting. So just to share, even in my personal life, right, nothing goes according to plan. So in May 2018, while I was cycling in Kuala Lumpur, a car came from behind at very high speeds and hit me very hard, leaving me unconscious. So I woke up in the intensive care unit in the hospital with fractures on my skull, bleeding in my brain. 3 of my 4 limbs were in a cast. And, sometimes life knocks you down hard. In this case, literally knocked down hard and really painful. But as I lay in that hospital bed, I was overwhelmed with emotion, fear, anxiety, depression. What was going to happen to me, right? Will I be able to lead a normal life again? What was going to happen to the new business that I just started? How do I provide for my family? See, all of us go through these negative emotions when we get faced by setbacks or failures. But I came to realize that there's no way I could find answers to these big questions. So when things are overwhelming, I needed to focus on the smallest things that I could do that are within my control and put aside the worries of those bigger questions. So with the support of my family and hospital staff, I just focused on learning how to sit up from my bed and to start walking again. So on the 7th day, I started to take my very first steps in the ward, even when one of my legs was fractured. And you can see I was still disoriented and trying to get my balance. But this gave me momentum. I celebrated those small wins, right? Keep focusing on what I can do rather than worry about things that were out of my control. I even deliberately stopped thinking about the driver that hit me and told people, all of your family and friends are asking what happened to him, why did he hit you? But I said, I don't want to know. I'm not angry at him because I want to use all my energy to heal and get stronger and not waste it on feeling angry at someone else. And so with momentum, I could start walking on the treadmill from about day 33 after I was discharged and slowly increasing the time from 5 minutes a day to 10 to 15 to 30. And here I want to share how we use behavior goals rather than outcome goals as a way to succeed, right? Many people focus on outcome goals, especially now, New Year's resolutions. And that's why 80% of New Year's resolutions die by February, right? For those of you who say, oh, this year I want to lose 10 kilos of weight. I want to save enough for down payment for a house. So I want to get a promotion. Instead, success is higher if we focus on behavior actions that we do daily, weekly, and then we review it frequently, at least once a month. And so by day 47, I could pick up the pace and start to run on the treadmill. Now, another tip on goal setting is to frame our behavior goals as action goals rather than avoidance goals. So actions are things that we do daily, like how many times am I going to go for a walk or run or write in a journal or drink 8 glasses of water? rather than an avoidance goal, right? Like I want to avoid social media, I want to avoid Netflix or avoid nasi lemak. You see, when we focus on negative goals, the brain only remembers nasi lemak and it doesn't register avoid. And so in my recovery journey, the joy came 2 months after the accident when I could run outdoors, that feeling of liberation and elation. Macam when we finished MCO and we could go outside, right? That was that big joy. But an even bigger joy and a big psychological milestone was to get back on a bicycle and to be able to ride outdoors again with my friends. And on day 84, less than 3 months from that accident. So momentum fuels more momentum. So with physiotherapy sessions 5 days a week, many of them really painful, I worked on gaining my shoulder and arm mobility, and finally the broken shoulder healed. And on day 112, when I could get back the full rotation of my arm, I started swimming again in the pool. You see, by then I had a very specific goal in mind. I wanted to get back to Ironman triathlon racing. So I worked with my coaches, kept working on my strength and stamina, and signed up for the Ironman triathlon race in Langkawi that November. See, this is important for me because being a triathlete is a big part of my identity. So on day 174, less than 6 months from that accident, I was able to complete Ironman 70.3 Langkawi, swimming, cycling, and running. Now, my motivation was I wanted to tell my children, and for the parents out there, you know, our children do not listen to what we tell them. They learn by observing what we do. And it's the same thing with our team members, our employees, and our students. So the message for my children is, life will knock you down hard, very hard. And we can't control what happens to us, but we can decide how we choose to respond. And this is why it's important to understand that our initial reactions and our impulses to things that happen to us are automatic, and they may limit us. You see, our brains is designed for one primary purpose: to keep us alive, our survival instinct. And the way our brain does this is that it steers us towards things that are familiar, things that are predictable, things that are reliable. This brain does not like things that are unknown, risky, or unproven. So our brain receives 50 million sensory inputs every single moment, and it can only consciously process about 7 or 8 at a time. So the way the brain handles all this excess information is that it filters everything out quickly based on these gut instincts. You know, that's why when you meet someone, even before that person has said a single word, our brain has already made a judgment whether you like that person or not. And these quick judgments can be limiting. The brain may tell us we cannot do something because it hasn't seen us succeed before. And it tells us to just stick to doing the same things, because anything that's unknown could be dangerous. And the brain is always on alert, right? Danger, danger, danger. Anything unknown, I don't like it. But my message to you is that stress is necessary, right? The stress we feel when we're experiencing danger is a way for the body to respond to that stress. So we don't want to avoid stress. We need to learn how do you positively respond to it. Because stress is a biological response, right? When the brain wants the body to spring into action. So for example, kalau this lion is chasing after this antelope in the savannah, the antelope's body is going to experience a surge in stress hormones. You guys know this: cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, to get the heartbeat faster, the lungs to expand, and the muscles to be primed for action. And these hormones also narrow the brain to only focus on the immediate threat. It shuts down the digestive system, the reproductive system, and even slows down the brain's ability to think creatively, because the brain is just telling us, just survive. Now, the lion who's chasing the antelope also needs to experience stress. Those same stress hormones also makes the lion's heart beat faster, its lungs to expand, the muscles to be primed for action in order to catch that antelope. Because if the lion doesn't catch its prey for several days, it could starve to death. Now, in today's modern world, hopefully none of you have the experience of a threat of a lion chasing you, but today's threat may come from our boss being angry at us, or our clients or patients being upset, or we experience pressure from sales targets, or maybe perhaps, the pressure from publish or perish, or maybe our spouse is unhappy with us. We experience the same hormonal reactions as if a lion is chasing us. So stress occurs whether we're the predator or the prey, and we choose how we respond. You can respond as the prey or victim, or you can respond as a predator ready for action. And this is why some people enjoy the thrill of a roller coaster ride or skydiving, while other people are deathly afraid of the same thing, or even public speaking in a webinar, right? The people who skydive, they experience the same nervous energy, but they look at it not as something to avoid, but something that they channel into action. So we choose how we look at these stress threats. But unlike that antelope, right? Usually kalau lion ni, when they're chasing the antelope, if they cannot catch the antelope in 30 seconds, it's going to run out of breath and give up. And when the antelope sees that the lion has run out of breath, it can go back to grazing again, and all the stress hormones dissipate away. But humans, we've evolved where it's harder for us to let go of these stressed feelings once the immediate threats go away. Now, for some of us, even when the threat has not yet emerged, right? The boss is not yet angry, the customer is not yet upset, there's still time to achieve our sales targets or time to publish research, or our spouse is not yet upset, we anticipate that it might happen, and it already causes these stress hormones to surge. That, in a way, is anxiety, right? Where we become worried about potential threats that have not yet emerged. And when we worry, these thoughts keep playing in our heads over and over and over again. And for some other people, once the threats dah lepas, way back in the past, the videos in our head still cannot stop playing. That is what we call depression. When something has already passed, sometimes long ago, childhood trauma, contohnya, the memories keep playing in our heads and we keep feeling depressed. So it's important, I just want to take a minute to talk about how do we start to become more aware of these conditions, right? So it's important to understand the early signs and symptoms of burnout that can lead to depression and anxiety from prolonged stress and pressure. So these include signs like physical fatigue, soreness, muscle tightness, irregular sleep due to insomnia, tak cukup tidur, hypersomnia, too much sleep, right? Because sleep's function is to rejuvenate and maintain our brain health. Or appetite changes, right? Eating too much or not eating at all, significant mood swings, suddenly becoming short-tempered, quick irritability or outbursts, or even fever, dizziness, sickness, and also disengagement, especially in the work context, where people, for example, make promises that they cannot deliver, or they stop responding to workplace jokes, or they stop contributing in team meetings. Even for me, a couple of weeks ago, I was rushing to meet multiple deadlines. I experienced another anxiety attack where I had this distinct rapid breathing pattern, dizziness, and I had chills because my blood was moving away from my skin towards my organs and muscles. Of course, this was triggered by some things that happened at work, and I literally had to stop and sit down for about 20 minutes for that anxiety attack to dissipate. So to illustrate what happens to our bodies when we experience prolonged stress, anxiety, and depression, consider this interesting fact, right? When I complete an Ironman triathlon race in Langkawi, in one day of swimming, cycling, running, I burn a staggering 6,000 calories. That's like 10 plates of nasi lemak. And at the end of the day, I would have lost like 2-3 kilos of weight. But a world champion chess grandmaster competing in a world championship chess tournament can also burn 6,000 calories. Now, clearly not from the physical activity of moving chess pieces around, but from the brain working really hard, thinking about multiple chess scenarios, like 50 moves ahead. Because the brain represents only 2% of our body's weight, but it consumes over 20% of all the calories that we eat. That is why when we're overwhelmed with stress, anxiety, and pressure, with all the negative thoughts playing over in our heads, we become physically fatigued and tired. And over time, we become sick with high blood pressure, diabetes, and heart diseases. So learning to build resilience and optimism and perseverance requires us to learn how to control these videos playing in our head of these anxious thoughts of the future or depressed thoughts of the past. So there are two things I want to share with you. First, mind wandering, right? The average person experiences mind wandering 47% of the time when they're awake. That means the brain is thinking of another thought instead of the task that they're supposed to do. So for example, when you listen to me on this webinar, half of you may actually be doing something else. I can see you, right? You're checking your WhatsApp messages, your social media news feed, answering emails, or writing a report. And that's one habit that most of us are guilty of, which is simultaneous multitasking. We think we're being productive by doing several things at once, but that is not what's happening because our brain cannot multitask. It does one thing at a time, and we're actually jumping from one task to the other, right? Contohnya, like 7 seconds, I focus on this WhatsApp message. Then 10 saat, I'm listening to this webinar by Azran. Then I move my attention, 12 seconds writing an email, 9 seconds talking to someone. And each time we shift from one task to the other, it takes the brain more energy to make that switch. So let's do an experiment. So to illustrate this, right? Try doing these two sets of tasks. On the left-hand side are math problems. And on the right-hand side that you see here are creative problems where you have to make a full sentence comprising of 2 words represented by each pair of icons. Right? So we went from left to right. So left, 18 times 7. UKM people, how fast? Tell me on the chat, how much is 18 times 7? 126. Then quickly move to the right. Make a sentence with a fish and a bicycle. And then when you're done with that, go back to the left, right? What is 52 plus 19? 71, right? Back to the right, make a sentence with an apple and an eye. And then back to the left. What is 46 minus 38? Back to the right, right? Make a sentence with a clock and a bird. And studies have repeatedly shown that task shifting, going from left to right in this case, will take about 20% longer to complete compared to someone who's doing all the math questions first and then all the creative questions in batches. So for those of you who think you're being productive by having multiple windows and apps on different devices open simultaneously, I'm sorry to say you're actually being less productive. So think about the implications for our teams who are not trained to work smartly, or worse, because bosses and managers constantly interrupt them and expect them to shift gears often. So imagine like driving a car where you keep accelerate, brake, turn every few seconds. You can imagine that it wears down the engine very fast and it burns more petrol. So driving efficiently is when you drive at a constant speed in one direction and only make turns periodically. So building mental fitness, right? Resilience and optimism and agility and curiosity doesn't happen just because you listen to one webinar, right? It's just like going to the gym. If I brought you to the gym and we spent 2 hours lifting weights, all you get are just sore muscles and you swear you'll never set foot in the gym again. So strength comes from daily or regular routines and practices, and it applies the same to both physical strength and fitness, as well as mental fitness and resilience. So let's talk about some of the things that can help us build mental fitness. So first, we've all heard of mindfulness, right? Or meditation exercises. These are exercises to train our brain to focus and concentrate on what is immediately in front of us and minimize those anxious thoughts of the future and depressive thoughts of the past. Now you might think, mana ada masa to add mindfulness exercises to an already busy daily life? But you can actually practice mindfulness in your existing daily routines. So when you're writing a report, spend 25 minutes writing that report, shut down all notifications and put away your phone, right? When it comes to emails, do it in a batch. 15 minutes, I'm going to clear my email. Then I'm going to close my browser and move on to another task until another 2 hours. Then I'll check my email again. Even tonight, when you have dinner with your families, learn to have dinner and be present with our families instead of trying to simultaneously send WhatsApp messages while you eat or watch TV while you eat. So building focus muscles to be aware of the present is the first step. Next, right, top performers, whether you're Olympic champions, performing artists, or professional speakers who perform in front of large audiences, use visualization techniques to overcome that anxiety or the panic attack that's common because our brain, because of the survival instinct, it keeps thinking about worst case scenarios playing in our head. So we need to give our brain homework to keep it occupied and focused on the immediate task. So to override the feelings of anxiety and panic, top performers use visualization. So they use mental imagery to focus on the desired future outcome as a result of our efforts. So if you have a key meeting coming up, a pitch or presentation, viva, a race or event, or like to have a difficult conversation that you need to have, if you're not deliberate, your brain can wander and fill itself with negative thoughts that sow self-doubt. So instead, visualization means first, okay, focus on visual images. Imagine the venue of the event. What are the surroundings? What are you wearing? What are other people involved wearing? Is it indoors or outdoors? Next, focus on the kinesthetic sensations. How did your body feel? If you're meant to sit down or stand up in that visualization scenario, try to get into that position. If you're meant to be moving, try to simulate that movement. Finally, focus on the auditory sensations, the sounds, right? What are you saying? What are the others saying? What's the background noise? Are crowds cheering or positive comments coming from your counterparts after you make a good presentation? You hear all of it in your head first. So if you're prepared to practice, you're going to get better at it than the first time you attempt visualization. So next, exercise. Since this is health sciences, right? Exercise also plays an important part in getting our body better able to handle stress and pressure. But some exercises are better than others for stress management. So not all exercise is the same. First, what counts is regularity, like 5-6 times a week, even if some days just 10 minutes saja, rather than doing 2 hours once a week playing futsal in Ampang at 10 p.m. and then not doing anything for 6 days, right? But also to do it at the right heart rate intensity, not too low. 10,000 steps can mean nothing, but not too intense. So generally about 120 to 140 beats per minute, depending on your age and your experience with exercise, because it's at this intensity that works best for the dentate gyrus in our hippocampus in our brain that regulates and stabilizes our moods. So the other thing is sleep. Sleep is so crucial for stress management. So remember when I shared earlier about minimizing those anxious thoughts of the future, the depressive thoughts of the past? Well, just like developing physically stronger muscles, that actually happens when we sleep. If you go to the gym and you lift weights, your muscles are actually not getting bigger. The muscles only grow when you're sleeping at night. So likewise, when we sleep, there are these glial cells in our brains that act like a gardener, taking out the weeds from the garden. It prunes away those anxious or depressive thoughts that are ruminating in our head. And that's why many of us are more clear-headed after a good night's sleep. And so I think, it's really important for us to think, well, what are the things we can do to really ensure we have a good night's sleep? Now, one final point to add on mental fitness and resilience. Most of us are familiar with stress-induced hormones. We talked about cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine that gets our heart to beat faster, the lungs to expand, the muscles to be primed, the pupils to dilate, and the vision narrows. But actually, the body's also sending out another hormone, oxytocin. So oxytocin is called the love hormone or the cuddle hormone. It helps to build human bonds of connection, right? It surges through a mother with a newborn baby. Because for millennia, beribu-ribu tahun, humans evolved to deal with threats, whether it was the coldest winters, the harshest droughts, when we were attacked by predators or enemies. The way we survived was that we bonded together as a tribe. And when we're alone, we're less likely to survive. So human connection is a critical part of building mental resilience. So choosing to spend time with positive people makes all the difference. Now, if you're affiliated with health sciences, these health behaviors that I talked about, mindfulness, exercise, sleep, healthy diet, and nutrition, all of that we know. But knowledge alone is not sufficient. If knowledge were enough, we wouldn't have cardiologists who smoke or dietitians who are overweight. We do. So knowledge does not translate to sustainable behavior changes. That's why 74% of Malaysians do not listen to their doctor's advice to change their lifestyles after being diagnosed with chronic diseases. 93% of Malaysians who attempt a diet will fail in less than a year. And 72% of people who start a new membership in January, gym membership, they're going to drop out before December. And 90% of people who wear Fitbit trackers will deliberately have lost their Fitbit or maybe only wear it to tell the time, and they're no longer counting their steps by December. And that's where agility comes in, right? Getting rapid feedback and making course-correcting changes every week or at least every 30 days. So when it comes to health behavior changes, we know that only 20% of people succeed to achieve their health goals by themselves. But those who work with a health coach and have a support system increase the chance of success by 3 times to about 60%. That's why top performers, right, like Lewis Hamilton, the 7-time Formula One world champion, or the New Zealand All Blacks, or the Liverpool football team, they don't just work with fitness trainers or Formula One engineers, but they also work with performance psychologists. In this case, Aki Hinsta holds Lewis Hamilton accountable and helps him develop a resilient and winning mindset even when he experiences defeats and setbacks. And there are 3 ways that coaching helps us to become more agile and succeed with behavior changes. So first, independent coaches create a safe space for us to explore the issues and challenges that we face. So friends, family members can be supportive, but they can also be judgmental, and they want to just tell us what to do, which is not helpful. So a safe space to talk about our challenges to someone helps us to articulate what are the issues that are in our heads, and this is usually a first step towards making actions to address them. So next, in my 30 Days and 30 Years book, I advocate changing our planning horizons from annual cycles, right? Annual plan, annual budget, annual performance appraisal, to a much faster cadence of 30 days so that we reassess, learn, and recalibrate much more frequently. So coaching creates the accountability for us to be agile, right? Every week, when they check in with us on our progress, we're more likely to achieve progress because we break it down into small actionable steps every day, every week, the weekly behavioral goals, like how I was able to learn how to walk again. And then, no matter what we try, you're bound to hit roadblocks, setbacks, and obstacles. On our own, we're much more likely to give up. But a coach can help us process our reactions and share different perspectives to make us consider, what are option B? What's option C kalau option A does not work, right? And this allows us to keep going, right? So that's kind of why, I really look at, change and looking at things differently. It's really not about big, gigantic ideas, but continuously testing and learning very, very quickly. So with that, I want to thank you for your attention and focus throughout this hour, and hopefully by now you would have some ideas on how to build mental resilience and tenacity to deal with the inevitable surprises, challenges, and obstacles that may lie ahead, knowing that you have it in you to charge through all of them and achieve your goals for 2021. My parting thought, right? Today, in our world, more people are dying from suicide than all of wars, murders, and terrorism combined, even in Malaysia. And more people die from diabetes, which is a preventable lifestyle disease, than all the infectious diseases combined, including COVID-19. But you add dengue, malaria, AIDS, Ebola, diabetes alone kills all of them, more than all of those infectious diseases. But while many people are aware and are tackling these crises of humanity, many don't understand the deep connections between diabetes dengan depression, between anxiety and heart disease, and why health needs to be addressed holistically. And employees and students need to be supported, not just while they're physically at work or in the university, but also at home so that they can achieve their healthiest and best selves. So with that, I'm going to pause say thank you very much. Wish you all the best for 2021 and look forward to any comments, questions, challenges. That's how we're going to learn together, by having a dialogue about what you think can work, what do you think will not work, and what are you willing to change and do differently in 2021. So with that, thank you very much. And I'm going to hand it back to Prof. Hida.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Encik Azran. And you know, I am not ready to your finishing. You know, I want to listen more to your talk. It just I think this is like a short-handed. But you wrap it so nicely while we are still hungry for more information, or we want to listen more and more about the resilience and the tenacity and the agility that we should have in bringing ourselves forward. And I'd like to welcome questions. First of all, if you have, you can unmute the microphone and ask the question yourself. And another way of asking is you could to ask using the chat platform, and we're going to read your question and ask Mr. Azran to respond to that. But while you are thinking about your questions, the platform is thinking about the questions, I'd like to get back to some of your quotes, which is one of it that really caught my attention is momentum fuels more momentum. And I think this is a very strike strike me on the head, because you need momentum, and that it fuels is like putting more energy for you to gain more and more momentum. And another quote that you put up on your just now is, stress is necessary for survival. Then I couldn't agree more. And you also mentioned about publish or perish. Clearly you understand about the lives of our as academician. We have to publish, or else we perish, you know, and that is very, very, very true. And not only that, we are laughing. Well, we as in the faculty in this room now, as when you mentioned about mind wandering, about 47% of us try to do multitasking, try to do simultaneously things at one time and at one go, but it's the wrong thing of doing it. It is becoming less productive, in fact, you know. So to be efficient, so please, meaning that you have to focus, do one by one. And absolutely, I couldn't say more about this, but I love your tips on the mental fitness. You know, it is really, coming from you about mindfulness and focus, and later on about visualization, which actually is very, very important to see, and to what I should say, to expect the unexpected, what is coming. That is what visualization is all about. And we also laugh when we talk, when you talk about the exercise and sleep, because those two things that are actually not we, but I myself is lacking about. So I know exercise makes oxytocin to be produced more, and you feel love, you feel you feel happy when you have that hormone. And this is definitely very, very important, and very, very, some food for our thoughts, not only for today, but for the remaining of the weeks, or if not for the year to come. Well, if anyone of the audience would like to ask question, you could unmute yourself and try to ask the question to the gentleman himself, Mr. Azran here. Do you have any questions? Yeah, because we are, I think we are like, you know,
Prof. Susanna
we
has a
become
question.
specialists. Yeah, Prof. Susanna, please. Prof.
Thank you,
Susanna.
Mr. Azran.
Okay.
You can predict that I'm going to ask. Can you predict what I'm going to ask?
No.
Okay. So I mean, when you say about, of course, about the health just now is that we are tackling health issue in silo because we become so specialized and things like that. So probably you can actually, from the non-health kind of professions, probably you can explain that and put your thoughts how best that we can improve our health system to improve wellness instead of focusing on the healthcare.
So one quick thought to share on that, Prof. Susanna, is that if you look at traditional organizations, and I'm going to step away from health to more, for example, in normal business, right? Organizations are designed by function, right? So this is marketing team, this is operations team, this is finance, and people work within a function. So in an agile organization, what we do is we say there are no longer organizations based on functions, but people are put together in project teams for, either 1 month or 2 to 3 months, where you take one rep from each function and they're there to solve a specific problem. They own that problem end to end. So you cannot say, oh, I cannot deal with one part because it's dealt by someone else, right? And every 30 days, we reshuffle the teams to realign based on the new objectives, the new projects that are being done. So that's kind of one way of kind of really breaking down the silos that usually kind of limit the amount of information and slows down decision because of silo barriers, right? So even with medical in healthcare, I think one of the challenges that we need to see more is how do we create these multidisciplinary teams? How does, for example, in fact, I'll share a real life example, right? When we were dealing with clients, a patient reached out to one of our doctors and said, "Doc, I ada sakit perut, right? Is it gastric?" And usually the doctor can only respond based on the information that you provide, the patient provides to the doctor. But separately, because the dietitian is following up proactively with the patient, right? Saying, hey, what are you normally having for breakfast? What do you normally have for lunch? Oh, selalu lunch I don't eat. Kenapa? Busy at work. You don't eat anything at all. Adalah, I makan asam, right? So doesn't eat lunch, only eats asam, but does not tell the dietitian she's got stomach pains, but does not tell the doctor that is her diet habits, right? And so for us, because we've got like this back end like group chat that is patient-centric. So every patient, the 8 different specialists are all seeing all their notes so that they can look at it much more holistically. We were able to connect these 2 dots, right? So we need to think about those sorts of mechanisms rather than just simply expecting the patient to see each individual specialist and synthesize it by themselves, which they cannot do.
Okay. That's great. Yeah. Prof, do you have any question to ask? Anyone from the platform?
Okay,
Yep.
we have a question in chat, Satu.
Yeah,
Can you explain more on the best sleep patterns? Ooh, this by itself can be a 2-hour discussion on sleep, because sleep is very complex. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. But if I were to share a couple of things that I have to learn on my own. Satu, I'm the kind of person that wakes up in the middle of the night because my head is always thinking about ideas and thinking about problems. I wake up in the middle of the night, right? So one of the things I've learned is to always have pen and paper on my bedside table. Because whenever there's a thought, what I need to do is just roll down and write that thought on that piece of paper. And that actually gives my brain permission to let go of the thought and go back to sleep. Because if you don't write it down, what the brain is subconsciously doing is to keep replaying that thought because it doesn't want you to forget about that thought. And so it actually makes you harder to fall asleep. So the simple act of having pen and paper can actually make a big difference. So now, of course, there are a lot of other things. You know, the single probably biggest culprit for a lot of us is if you have your mobile phone by your bedside table, that is probably one place you want to start and rethink that practice.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Hafiz Halim, for he said that watching you is just like watching CNN. You know, so thank you very much. I took it as a compliment then. Yeah. All right. And another question by Prof. Fadila, actually.
So, yeah, this is a fascinating question, Dr. Fadila, because from our data, right, when we compared scores of depression, anxiety, stress for under 30 years old compared to those who are above 40, the under 30s, these younger millennials, were experiencing between 40 to 79% more depression, anxiety, and stress than the older generation. So there's clearly a generational factor at play here. And it goes beyond, I mean, there are a lot of factors, of course. I mean, including, for example, financial pressure is a genuine trigger because wages have not been going up as high as inflation or cost of living, right? And that's creating more pressures right now. But if I were to pick just one of the factors yang paling interesting for me is this phenomenon of being overwhelmed by too many choices. You see, for old people like me, when we grew up, 1984 was a seminal year. Because if you remember 1984, we were introduced to TV3. Suddenly we went from 2 TV channels to 3 TV channels and we were so happy. Today you grow up, your number of TV channels and programs are infinite. You want to watch one series, you'll be missing out on 7 series that your friends are watching. Shopping now, it's infinite, the number of choices on Lazada, Shopee, Carousel, right? Relationships. Now, you know, on Tinder, you can swipe left, swipe right. 50 people will be put in front of you to make a choice. And the best way to illustrate this was actually an experiment done, right? Where to illustrate the power of when you have too many choices and how it affects your moods, right? So they gave 2 sets of groups, a task. And when you complete the task, you were given a reward. And that reward was to choose a painting that you get to keep that you like from a number of choices. So group 1 was told to give a painting and then you get to keep it. Group 2 was told pick a painting, but if you don't like it, you can come back 1 week from now and change that painting. Guess what happens when they then measured happiness for those 2 groups? If you have a choice, you're actually going to be less happy with what you have. Right? And that is why you're seeing today, younger people are constantly changing jobs because they feel like I'm missing out on something, right? I cannot stick to one thing alone, right? So this is why there's this really interesting phenomenon that's been wired by a social environment that's overwhelming us with too many choices. So like, without getting into like the whole, like what are the structural solutions, but if we can at least first understand the impact of multiple choices, it will start to give us ideas on what we can do to kind of help this new generation from being overwhelmed by too many choices.
Yeah. So yeah, not having many choices also is not good. Yeah, I think we are at the same era in Azran. So we don't have much choices back then, you know. But I think we are more content than whatever the youngsters are having right now. And I think there are a couple of questions actually from Shazwani, I think. What is your view on night owls or those who work best in the morning? What is your opinion on this?
Well, clearly, I mean, there's a lot of science on, you know, differences to circadian rhythms, and some people genuinely have more energy in the middle of the night, and some people have more energy early in the morning. Some people are afternoon people. So the best way is to learn, right? And this is why, for me, I would encourage everybody to do a personal energy audit. So a personal energy audit is basically like for the next 5 days, right? Just write down in your journal, when a moment's time of day when you feel more energized and you get more work done, and when are days when you feel like, oh, I'm just so unproductive. Just write it down. Kedua, besides time, is what are the activities that you're doing yang mana, you know, certain activities you're naturally more engaged with, and some activities you feel your whole energy is draining. And the third is who you spend time with. Some people you spend time with are really energizing. You feel so much better. And some people, don't be surprised, they may be your own family members, may be draining your energy. So once we know our landscape of our energy patterns, then we can then start to optimize our lives to be able to do the right things at the right time of the day with the right people in order for us to maximize our energy output, rather than just do things, you know, letting life dictate what we do. So being smarter about our choice of when we do things, what we do versus what we delegate, and who we spend time with can make a huge difference.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Very, very good tips. And I think all of us could practice that. Yeah. Another question is actually following one of the question before, prior to this, is actually, can you explain more on behavior change as outcome when manage your client?
Well, okay. So there are a couple of things. I mean, this is again a very, very long topic, but usually, you know, like, you know, most of you may be familiar with kind of, you know, the stages of change, and some people are really not even thinking about changes. Some people are thinking, but they're lacking in the catalyst to get started because they're overwhelmed with the challenge, right? Like, for example, I'm morbidly obese and the doctor says I need to lose 30 kilos. That sounds so impossible. I don't even know where to start, so I don't even begin. Kedua, right? A lot of us feel like we can only change when we feel it's the right time to change. But that's actually not true, right? Because our feelings are influenced by our actions instead of thinking that the actions are influenced by the feelings. So we cannot influence our feelings, but by starting with the smallest actions, our feelings will change, right? And that is why when we work with, we just say, okay, let's say you've never exercised before, right? What we focus on is to help you define what is the easiest thing you can do. Like if I were to tell you, like, can you commit to 1 minute a day of exercise, right? Surely, Prof. Ida, you can find 1 minute a day, right? And in 1 minute a day, we can come up with things. For example, right? Whether it's walking up and down stairs, right? For 1 minute, right? Or parking your car slightly further and walking for 1 extra minute. And if you can do that for 2 weeks, and I reward you, I recognize you, I applaud you for doing that, maybe next week, let's increase that to 3 minutes, right? You start to feel momentum that you are able to keep achieving, right? So by breaking it down to the smallest task, that's why when I was paralyzed on that hospital bed, I could not do until my own psychologist said, okay, Azran, let's just learn to walk 5 steps, kemudian 10 steps, kemudian 1 minute, right? Like the smallest chunks was, helped me create that momentum that did not exist at the start.
Right. Yeah. So start, do not start big, but start small. But anyway, anything starts with one small step. Yeah. Oh, definitely. Ever since we had that talk when we met the first time at your place, Naluri Hidup, I've been doing that, So I just on the treadmill, 1 minute. Cik Azran said just 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. But that 1 minute turned to 3 minutes, turned to 5 minutes, turned to half an hour now. So it's good, yeah, sometimes but you need someone to tell you. That's why I think coaching is very, very important, like what you mentioned. So you know it already. It's all in your head, but, someone needs to tell you. Anyway, there's another question, I think, how to, by Prof. Asma, how to instill strong values in young generations, that your life is not as easy as it is, but you need to be patient and persevere in order to achieve their goals. How to instill those things? If you could share some of your
wisdom. I'll share my personal experience, because contohnya with Naluri, I've got about 60 employees. I'm the only one that's approaching 50. In fact, I'm the only one in my 40s, right? I've got a few people in their 30s and most people are still in their 20s, right? And so the way to energize this new generation is not to tell them like, things were tougher during my time, but to appeal to their strong sense of purpose. They actually have, once they can lock onto a strong sense of purpose, right, suddenly that energy is going to come. So what I try to do is to sit down with them and try to help them identify the intersection between 3 circles. Okay, circle number 1 is, what are you good at? Right? What are the skills that you bring to the table? And the real test to this is, will people pay you for your skills? So even a fresh grad, right? If you think about it, some people might be good with numbers and analysis. Some people may be good with writing. Some people may be good with organizing. Let's define what you're good at. Kedua, what are you passionate about? Imagine if you did not have to worry about money at all, what would you be doing? How would you spend your time doing, right? But ketiga, the third is, what big problem do you care about in this world, right? And the real test is, what do you read about? What do you talk to people about? Now, of course, there's some young generations who are not even reading anything and not about talking about anything. Well, I don't hire them, right? But a lot of people, young people, are extremely mission driven. Now, when we try to tell them, let's find the things that you are good at that can help you keep doing things that you're passionate about, that helps to solve or make a small impact to the societal issues that you care deeply about. When they can define that purpose, new energy comes up, right? So our task as leaders is to help them define the purpose rather than tell them, you must do this, right? You must spend 5 years in this department before I allow you to go see external clients. That's not inspiring.
No, agree. Totally agree. I have to cut you short there because I think we have many questions coming in. But another question from Prof. Adila again. Second question, how do you change your area of interest from a very different areas and cover it excellently? But first, I don't think I mentioned to the audience that actually your first degree and your master degree, your first degree is from a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering, from Stanford University way back in 1994. And after that, you earned your Masters of Science in Management Science and Engineering, also from Stanford University. So looking at your education from the electrical engineering now to where you are now, I can understand the question from Prof. Adila. Can you enlighten us, friend?
Sure. So first, I think I benefited from a curriculum that encouraged us to work on final projects across multiple disciplines. So even though I was an electrical engineer, my final year project was, we were going to build an elevator system using water. So I had to work with a mechanical engineer, I had to work with an aeronautical engineer, and then, we kind of learn how to work on other people's disciplines. And so to come back to my career, you see, if you wear one lens, you might think Azrani is like a rolling stone that gathers no moss. Kejap, highly regulated, capital-intensive business like an airline, to fast-moving internet businesses, media, entertainment, stock exchanges, and now healthcare. But I look at it and say, I've always been working on the same thing, right? So instead of defining it by industry, I define it by the problem that I'm trying to solve. And the problem that I'm trying to solve is, how do I look at an industry and find ways to make it 10 times cheaper and 10 times more convenient for the customer who would otherwise not be able to enjoy those services? So when I looked at long-haul airlines, why is it that Cathay Pacific and Singapore Airlines does things? Is there a different way that we can do it to unlock flying long-haul at a much cheaper price? Entertainment, why are we all paying 100 ringgit a month to a satellite TV channel, right? When, our phones have far more computing power than a set-top box. Why do we need a set-top box, right? For every room that we're watching in. So by challenging these assumptions that people take for granted, so that's kind of how I'm thought process. And you've seen how I look at healthcare differently, right? So all along, I solve the same problem of accessibility, affordability, and convenience. And it doesn't matter what the industry is. And every single time, I collaborate with industry experts.
That's it. Okay. Right. And also there's a question from Nur Amri. I'm interested with your chart where I can see a lot of sticky notes on your tasks and goals. Can you give us some tips on how to do it?
Wow, okay, that's another very long thing, because the thing that we have to be careful about is different systems work for different people. right? So some people by definition are much more visually oriented. Some people are much more about writing because, you know, writing and reading is the way that retain information. For some people, it's human connection, right? Like just organizing doesn't make sense. But, you know, if I spend time with the right people, that's kind of how I organize my life. So first of all, we got to start with the premise that there isn't one perfect system for everyone, but it's important to learn what works best for ourselves, right? So in my case, for example, you know, I use symbols, right? So simple things. Satu, my notebooks always have pages, right? Because I'm always writing notes. But if there's a certain action item that I need to follow up, I have a separate section in the front of the book, like a table of contents. This is action, and it refers to this page, page 74, right? And so I can always then check that table of contents and be able to tick off what are the outstanding things. Because if I'm writing notes, selalu I cannot keep track of where my notes are. So I need what are the follow-up actions to bubble up. And that's where I kind of use symbols and I use page numbers as my own personal system to deal with all my different priorities.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. Next question, I think, coming from that kind of industry, I'm sure from, and this is a question from Dr. Nurhaliza. What do you have value most from knowledge sharing in academics institution?
Wow. I think, you know, first of all, the most important thing for me is rigor, right? You know, for example, in healthcare, right? Like you can't just make certain claims, right? Are there, you know, proper controls so that you can especially address confounding variables, right? That is so hugely important because otherwise we tend to make very quick assumptions, right? And so I think that the stress test doesn't meet academic standards, doesn't meet clinical standards for you to be able to extract new insights. That is probably something I value the most. And from Naluri's side, we have been investing in clinical research. We sponsor, you know, someone's PhD right now for one of our clinical research projects, and we're going to keep doing more clinical research so that it's important that there's a true evidence base of any of the claims or any of the efficacy that we're trying to aim for.
Awesome. All right. Another question from Dr. Asfarina. She applied. It's a very inspiring talk. And what is your top tips in good decision making? Should we take the risk or not?
Wow. Okay. Again, another not so straightforward, and it's always very, you know, you have to take everything I say with a big sack of salt because, you know, gross oversimplification is probably one of the ways that we all fall into traps. Here's what I learned, right? I learned as a leader, I actually don't know what I'm talking about, and I always have this thing called a confirmation bias, right? I tend to very quickly make conclusions based on my past experiences. So the one thing that's very important for me are who are my mirrors. Mirrors are people who, when I tell them, look, this is how I'm thinking, they're able to reflect it back to me and let me look at things in different perspectives. So I am my biggest enemy, right? Because I make quick judgments. So what I need are people who say, not to kind of necessarily tell me what to do, but by simply me explaining to them and they clarifying that they understood me. And then they say, well, how would that apply to this? How would that apply to that? That starts to give me new perspectives that I'm missing. So I have my own personal board of directors. There are 7 other people. I see them about 8 times a year, right? It's a very structured process. Chapter 8 of my book talks about this process if you're interested. But having this group act as my mirror, act as my sounding board, and creates accountability for me to actually do what I say I want to do is an important part of my personal decision-making process.
Wow. You know, this is, I know it's so, what I shall say, not only awesome, but it's very, very a very big thing. Yeah, decision making is always a big thing. But you do it in your own way that is so awesome, and making sure that everybody that it is accountable and everybody is engaged into that. Well, another question: do you face any failure before? Well, as you well known as today, a question by Mr. Zul Amin.
So, well, hopefully we can wrap it up after this question, but I have had more failures, and
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
why I lost all my hair, right? I had to shut down a business and retrench 450 staff. I've been fired by my board of directors. I've been sued for 70 million ringgit, right? You know, I've been involved in a court case that's been dragging on for 10 years because of disputes between two shareholders. So there's been a lot of frustrations. I've had people kind of cheat me and, you know, abscond with 7 million ringgit. So, you know, because I made wrong decisions on hiring people. A lot, way more mistakes than any of the very few limited successes that I've had. But in mistakes is where we learn.
Yeah, yeah, as we go along, definitely mistakes is actually a good teacher, so that we don't repeat that one. Thank you so much. There are so many applause in our side. From the chat rooms, you could see that this is a very, very eye-opening sharing session that you give to us, and I think we had to stop right now because it's almost approaching 4. But anyway, thank you so much for spending this past 1.5 hours with us. But before that, another 2 hours as well. I mean, actually, it's almost like 2 hours that you have that session with us. I do not know how to say how humble we are and how privileged to have you together with us in this session. I think with lots of tips that you have given to us, we will plow through the 2021 with the resilience and agility and tenacity, as you had mentioned in your talk.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And with that, I from Faculty of Health Sciences, we are saying thank you to all the participants as well for to be with us, bearing to be and listen to Encik Azran, Osman, Rani, for a very, very thoughtful and very informative talk. Again and again, thank you very much. Hope to see you again, Mr. Azran,
I'm sure we
in
will.
person and also on other
Inshallah.
occasions. Thank you, and I'm signing off for the Faculty of Health Sciences.
Bye-bye,
All
Prof.
right.
Ida.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. And for the rest of the audience, okay, who had given your metric and or your number per, we are now showing you the QR code for you to scan for your attack. For your what we call this QR code. The QR code for the for the attendance. Those who cannot scan, then only we will try to register you manually. Okay, you can use this using UKM. Or what my is UKM. My UKM, yeah. You could use your My UKM. If I can walk together with you, My UKM, go for your menu, and under the menu is your smart attendance. Okay, so I'm doing it now, and the smart attendance, click on the smart attendance, and on the right hand side is the word scan. Use your light scanner and scan it. Okay. Right.
Prof Ida. Prof Ida.
Yes, saya.
Prof Ida. Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Ada isi Google Form. Ada isi Google Form kena scan juga lagi ke?
No. Those who had filled up,
Rohida.
okay. Hello.
Dr. Asma dengar tak?
Hello.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
Aha.
Yeah.
Ya, ya.
Okay.
Dengar.
I
Ya,
want to
dengar.
inform.
Ah.
Yep. I want to inform those who had filled up the Google form does not need to scan the QR code. You are recorded already. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very
Prof
much.
Asma, you okay, tak payah apa ni scan dah sebab kalau nak scan juga boleh je. Tapi kita those yang dah isi Google form kita dah honoured as attendees.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you everyone. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you everyone. Waalaikumsalam. Bye. Muah muah muah. Assalamualaikum.
Muah, muah, muah. Waalaikumsalam.
Ya. 30 days and 30 years. Resilient and executive for 2021.
My counter. Oh Allah. Main nak pergi counter kejap. Dah dia kata scan. Scan macam mana?